The United States Bankruptcy Code, before the 2005 amendments, is one of the most brilliant pieces of legislation ever crafted. It was written by three guys who deeply understood the goals and purposes of bankruptcy, and it is brilliant. Could do the exact same thing with crypto. We could get 10 people in a room, tell them what our goals are, and let them craft beautiful legislation.
GM, and welcome to the Boonafide Experience podcast. I am your host, Kyle, but really, most people, they just call me Boona. This is a Web3 podcast that curates the stories of artists, collectors, and true visionaries pushing the boundaries of technology to create a brighter future for all. That was X-Lawyer in one of our very passionate discussions around how the government is not doing great when it comes to regulation on crypto, and how this one simple trick, which history tells us works, on how we can actually come together and solve this problem. X-Lawyer is a gem and a treasure. He likes to write threads. He's got a great pinned tweet that has a lot of his threads surrounding Web3, spotlights of artists and collections, as well as legal. He is also a Nifty Gateway Publisher, and by far one of my favorites to date. We start off this episode with a little cope, because this was recorded on the first or second day of Art Basel. We dive into his intro into the Web3 space, the advantages of both digital and physical art, and some of his history around collecting physical art, practical applications with NFTs, along with examples, a dissection of how the government is handling crypto, which is, like I said, not great, the mindset and the questions he asks himself when collecting art as a business, and lastly, with a little bit of alpha, we cover his most recent artist with his upcoming Nifty Gateway drop. As always, none of what is being discussed here should be relied upon for financial advice, and some of the NFTs that we discuss in this episode might be owned by either X-Lawyer or myself. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the show. Oh man, GM, sir, how are you?
GM, I'm good. I'm tired. It's late on a Friday. Glad that the work week is over. I'm also having massive FOMO right now.
Oh, dude.
All of my friends are in Miami. And I'm looking at my timeline and I'm really missing it. But then I see posts from people like Farouk that say Miami in a summary, and it's just a picture of Google Maps with like a half-hour drive time to go a mile. So I feel pretty good about dodging that.
I think I share the sentiment. Initially, I was super dishonest with myself around how I really felt about not going, especially after the experience I had in New York. And I was like, you know what? I'm being disciplined. It's going to be great. It's going to be, I'm going to handle this like a champ. And like, I did good for like a couple days, but like after all the pictures started coming in, I was like, yeah, all that shit's out the window. I was like, I did it for a while, but if I'm really honest with myself, like it's bittersweet. Cause I think, you went to New York this past year, like these IRL events are just, they just make it all worth it. There's so much fun.
They are. Yeah. They're tons of fun. And I posted something, I don't know, yesterday or day before, talking about how important they are because they let you, I'm really close to a bunch of people on Twitter and I DM with them all the time that I've never met in real life. But when you get to meet somebody in real life and you get to give them a hug and, see their face when they're laughing and maybe see their face for the first time. Cause most people think that I look like a frog human hybrid. I'm actually less frog than my PFP implies. But you get to, there's just something special about a physical connection. And I think that probably COVID made us realize how special that connection is. Zoom and Twitter and all of that shit's great, but getting to give somebody a hug and laugh with them in person and have a drink with them in the same room. Yeah. There's like magic there. And then, you go to a giant event, Miami, New York, whatever, and you've got a bunch of people, thousands of people that are all there at the same time for the
Mhm.
same reason. And it kind of has a network effect in the city. A bunch of people start asking questions. Well,
Yeah.
what are these ape hoodies that you're wearing? There's a bunch of art here that's never been here before. Tell us about it. And,
Yeah.
that kind of exposure in general is good for the space. So I love the IRL events. I think they're very important, and I think that people that haven't had a chance to make one should, do the best they can to find a way to go to one of them.
Yeah.
At least once.
I fully agree with you. I mean, it was, for me, it was a big risk for me to go this past year. Like, I booked everything, to New York. I booked everything last minute, because I was resisting going, and I was just for the long time. I was like, you know what, though, it's actually going to cost me more to not go to one of these. Just from all of the opportunity I'm going to lose out on, and just the opportunity to meet everyone that I've literally made content with for the past year and a half, and I got to meet like 15 to 20 people that I had on my podcast. And it was like that, again, that feeling like when you've shared bonds, you shared moments, you shared shit posts, and then getting to give that person a hug, there's no better feeling, and I had immediate regret when I landed because I had no plan. I had no idea what I was doing. But after the first event, it was like all of that went out the window. It's like, okay, this is fine. I made the right decision. Like, this is good. I'm going to have an absolute blast. And I think one of the things that like I learned there though is, because I'm not sure how long you've been in the space. I've kind of been here since I came in the Beeple sale. But I didn't really know where my place was for the longest time. And like, I'm like, do I have a foot in the PFP game? Do I have a foot in the art game? How much, it really forced me to really think, wow, who do I want to spend the most time with when there is all these events that have a lot of like appeal to go to, you know what I mean? And it's really where like I was able to confidently say, okay, now I know where to spend my time going forward.
Yeah, no, I mean, 100%. Like in New York, I think I had one day where I had 4 events at the same time.
Yeah.
And I was trying to plan around, how do I make this one? How do I make that one? And, obviously I had to miss some of those. But getting to go to IRL events, if you're kind of like you were, and I was in that place once too, where I was like, I don't know how much I care about PFPs versus just, fine art. And getting to go to those events, it gives you the opportunity to meet, people and see what they're really like. And that'll help you find your circle that you fit in and mesh with best. And so,
yeah.
I went to some amazing events. I went to some artist events, and then I went to a couple of PFP events. I went to the Capsule House event, and that was a ton of fun.
Yeah.
I'm very much looking forward to hopefully getting to do another one of those soon. But yeah, I mean, it's, I think if you're going to go to an IRL event for your first time, plan something, look at the schedule, plan on going to a couple of things. But then give yourself permission to break your plans because you're going to, because you're going to get a random invite.
Yeah.
Maybe you're having coffee with somebody and they're like, hey, do you want to go to this thing? And, you're like, well, shit, I hadn't planned that, but fuck it, let's go, and so some of the very best times I had at NFT NYC were things that I had completely not planned. They were not on my calendar. And I'm a person that if it's not on my calendar, it is not happening. It is not real. So I did in fact go in and add them to my calendar. So.
Of course you did.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that, man. So, I mean, something that like, just a icebreaker question, man, I guess there's 2 questions here is, when did you first like find NFTs, and like, what was like the appeal to you? Like, what was kind of like that light bulb moment where you're like, damn, like I want to spend time that I don't really have already to learn about this. Yeah.
So, I mean, I remember hearing about CryptoPunks years ago when they were first coming out, and they were selling for like, after the claim, they were selling for a couple of $100s and a couple of $1,000, and I didn't get it. I was like, this is stupid. Why would you buy this? This is, somebody spent $2,000 on this. Well, like, what an idiot.
Yeah.
And, I just kind of let it go. And then the people sale happens. And it's this eye-popping number.
Yeah.
And so I pull that piece to look at it and learn about it. And I'm like, this is very interesting. And at the same time, you had Dapper Labs and Top Shot in the news. And so NFTs, Top Shot, both in the news at the same time.
Mm.
And one of my primary sources of news is Bloomberg. So
Got it.
And Bloomberg tends to be very good factual news. They've gotten kind of opinionated recently,
Sure.
but in general,
Yeah.
factual news is really solid. So if something's in Bloomberg, then it's like, okay, this is not a flash in the fan. This is real.
Right.
So I follow it, and then I eventually decide that I'm going to take the leap in around September of 21.
Okay.
That's when I created my Twitter account. And like I would imagine 99% of people that come into the space, I entered through PFPs.
Sure.
I entered through a couple of tiny itty bitty little projects that weren't really PFPs. They were kind of art based. And in fact, I think I still own maybe the first or second NFT I ever bought. It was a pixelated portrait of Mr. Burns.
From the Simpsons.
From The Simpsons. Yeah, this guy did. You know what? I think it's in a hot wallet. I'm going to find it. I'm going to transfer it to my Vault wallet, xlawyer vault.eth, and look for the pixelated picture of Mr. Burns. And that was probably one of my first 3 or 4 NFTs.
I love it.
But then, I ended up, I bought a Crypto Mori, which I still own. I bought a Dead Fellow, which I still own. I bought a Capsule House on secondary. I didn't get to mint it. Fun story on that one. Bought it unrevealed, and it turned out to be a cultist. And I think I sold that for 2 or 3 ETH. And then I've since bought, I think, 2 more. But I was drawn in, like most people, by PFPs.
Sure. Yeah.
And then in December of 21, I started to learn more about art blocks and one-of-one art and that sort of thing. And so around January of 22, I decided that I was going to write weekly spotlighting different artists. And I was very, very good about that. I did that I've probably written 50, not 50, maybe 30 of them at this point.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking, all right, well, I should write about other things too. So I started writing some legal threads. I don't really do those very much anymore. There's plenty of other great resources that do those.
Yeah.
And I started writing about other things probably in February or March. And so by the time that I got to NFT NYC in June, I was very much, okay, I still have a couple of PFPs, but very much on this is an artistic, cultural force kind of bandwagon. And that's basically the overly long summary of my journey.
We like the overly long. That's what I was going for. So did you follow up? Did you collect art before this, or is this kind of all new to you?
No, I love art. When I was in undergrad, I studied abroad for a semester in London.
Oh wow.
And really fell in love with art in London. But my parents, when I was growing up, they collected primarily bronze sculptures.
Got it.
That they would buy at estate sales and local auctions, nothing from Christie's or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my family goes to Vegas a lot, and we did when I was younger. So they would buy some at some of the galleries out there and that sort of thing. And so I've collected art for a long time, loved art for a long time. And it's when you get to live in a city like London or New York or Paris, it's hard not to be exposed to world-class art because like, the Tate Britain, Tate Modern in London, most of their collections are free to visit. And when I say world-class, I mean that those two museums are easily top 25 museums in the entire world.
Yeah.
And so, you get to spend time with Rembrandts and Rothkos. You're either going to immediately fall in love, or art is just not your thing. There's really not much in between. And so the discovery that there were one-of-one artists and small edition artists and fine artists within the NFT space, which I generally refer to as crypto art now, was kind of like, okay, I think I've found my people.
I would tend to agree with you. I know I enjoy that, and I actually had reason I ask is because I was taken to, I grew up in Houston, and so
did you really?
Yeah.
Are you still in Texas?
Yeah, I am. I'm in Austin.
All right, I'm in Fort Worth.
Hell yeah, man. Dude, we're literally like 3 hours away. We'll have to get coffee.
Absolutely. Which 3 hours for those people that are listening, they're like, oh my God, that's forever. No, in Texas, that's like it's like a daily drive. Come on.
Yeah, it's what's really funny. A sidestep before I tell the stories, that because growing up in Houston, everything was like a 10 to 15 minute drive minimum. Like that was just because Houston's just so spread out, and that's just the time it took to get anywhere. And now that I live in Austin, Austin's such a small city. Like it's actually like it's growing in population, but the actual city is tiny. And I catch myself saying, "Oh man, it's like across town." And it's like across town is literally a 30-minute drive. And I'm like, man, you really forgot where you came. You really like lost touch of where you came from, because that used to just be a common drive. Like 30 minutes was not that big of a commitment. It was because we would sometimes go to Galveston or Moody Gardens and stuff like that. It's like, that's a commitment, right? But 30 minutes is
exactly.
Yeah, we just go into the city. So I grew up in a little suburb outside of Houston. So it was about 25 miles into the inner city in Houston. So, but it's still, Houston area. It's kind of like Dallas, Fort Worth. It's the same shit.
I mean, frankly, for the listeners, you and me, we can't be friends, man. I mean, you're from Houston, I'm from DFW. We're basically mortal enemies.
We are. Yeah, it is. I mean, we can connect on this, but we are outside of this. We are mortal enemies, 100%.
Exactly.
But it's like I grew up going to the Houston Museum of Fine Arts, and like it's a great museum there. And I didn't realize it till years later, but I remember going as a kid, and I just remember like looking at it and like really like being drawn to it. But I think where my disconnect was is that like I just could not fathom why, this is like me being at like 5 or 6 years old, so I had no concept of money and no concept of life really. But I'm like, why? I just had the question, why does someone pay so much money for this? And why, like, and what drives the value of that? Like, why do these people pay just these exuberant amounts of money for stuff like that? And it actually wasn't until I found this, like, and then after that, I just never took an interest in art. I was set on the path to like get a quote unquote real job. Like, the art's kind of like, fell by the wayside. And, but it wasn't until this space when I came in that I didn't realize like how much I had I didn't realize how strong my connection was, until after coming in through the Beeple art sale and through the PFPs. And then it's like, oh my God, like this is just like I'm like a kid in a candy store here. This community is like for the people that like have an infinite amount of curiosity and, are just seeking constant questions. And, but yeah, it was just like, so like, that's why I started interviewing artists. I'm like, I want to learn more about photography. I want to learn more about, digital art. I want to learn more about illustration, and, I found that a lot of people here in the space were not previous art collectors before they came into the NFT space, and everyone's just kind of like learning and figuring this out. And so, I mean, it's cool that you have that background. So it gives you probably had good taste before you came in here based on your wallet that I see here.
I really appreciate that. I mean, but you raised some really, really interesting things there that, you know what, they'll probably turn into threads someday. But,
Good.
why why do so many people that may have enjoyed art come into this space and they've never bought art before, and then the next thing you know, they own 50 or 100 pieces?
Mm.
You know, I mean, I do think that ownership is a powerful thing.
Yes.
I think that ownership helps you build a connection in a way that merely observing does not.
Mm.
I mean, if you think about celebrity memorabilia, like
Yeah.
why do people want to own, you know, Elvis's pants?
Yeah.
You know, and it's because they, you know, connected with his work. And what's better than connecting just with the music while owning something that has a direct connection to the music?
Yes.
It makes you even closer in a way. And so here, you know, owning an NFT, yeah, you could go and right click save, but it's just not the same as actually owning it and getting to, you know, display it in an on cyber gallery and say, that's mine, or put it up on a token frame or whatever. And so, you know, ownership is powerful. So why do people buy here that had never bought before? And, you know, frankly, I think that a big chunk of that is because the traditional art world is not easy to navigate.
It's not.
Like, if you go to a touristy city, I mentioned Vegas earlier, there are a lot of galleries there. And some of them have some really interesting, cool looking things. But if you're trying to buy it as, you know, this is going to be fine art that might appreciate in value, you're just going to lose your ass on it because it's not, because it's mass produced, right?
Yeah.
And then if you go to like a truly exceptional gallery, they can be very, very stuffy. And then you're looking around and you're like, dude, why is that $25,000?
Yeah.
That's worth what my car is worth, right? That's where a lot of people are. And so it kind of turns them off of the I'm going to buy art thing. And then you come into crypto art, and yeah, we certainly have the pieces that sell for thousands of dollars. But I think that crypto artists are very good about trying to produce accessible pieces that are accessibly priced.
Yep.
So before we started recording, you told me that you did an interview with Mae recently. She's one of my favorites. Her work sells for a lot of money. I own a one-of-one. But she also did an open edition that was priced at $169, and I think 77 people bought them.
I was one of them.
Oh, awesome! That's awesome. You know, I published that one on Nifty Gateway, and you know, I think that by allowing people to buy editions, it's a very accessible way into art ownership that is much, much, I'm not going to say harder to do, but it is more rare in the traditional art space. And then, of course, there's the whole factor of, all right, so you bought a painting, now you have to hang it. You know?
Yeah.
And I mean, physical art is, it's amazing, and it's never going to go anywhere. And some of the best works ever created and that ever will be created, including in the future, will be physical works of art.
100% agree with you.
But there are some kind of pain in the ass factors with physical art, the same way that there are kind of some pain in the ass factors with dollar bills, right?
So I have some thoughts on that, because that was one of the things that, very much like you, I don't have wall space or enough of it. So that was one of the things that attracted me to this. Is like, oh wow, like not only can I have as many pieces as I want, it's like this infinite, it's like this backpack that never ends, that I can just keep putting my favorite art in. Except I have the ability to display it in things like on cyber and like these digital frames. I actually put one of those on my Christmas list. It's one of the murals from Netgear.
Nice.
So
I've got a 10-inch token frame.
okay, how do you like it?
I love it. It's great.
Okay,
I've got it at my office at work. I'm planning on picking up, I think their largest size is like a 55.
yeah,
I'm planning on picking one of those up soon, and I'm going to hang it in my living room at my house.
love
And my wife, Mrs. Ex-Lawyer,
it.
she generally does not have much to say in the selection and collection process. She's very
Okay,
interested. But there are some pieces that I've shown her um, and asked her opinion, or I've given her some choices. I've said, "Hey, I'm going to buy one of these three. Which one do you prefer?"
yeah,
And so we have some pieces that she really loves that I'm excited about being able to rotate through based on,
I love,
our
yeah,
mood and whatever. I think that I wrote a whole thread about it was like you're underestimating the um, how big crypto art will be. And one of the arguments in the thread was being able to have a single display and then rotate what's there based on your mood or time of day or whatever is
that's right.
very, very powerful.
Yep,
And I can guarantee you that as this space grows, um, very wealthy people are always going to buy very expensive paintings. They're always going to buy Jackson Pollocks and Picassos, etc.
I mean, look at what was it? I can't
Paul
remember his
Allen's,
name. Paul Allen's, yep,
yep,
that one. What was it? 1.5 billion was cleared in one night.
yeah, right around there,
Yeah,
including
insane.
several all-time highs that exceeded $100 million a piece. So those
It's
paintings are
insane.
always going to sell, but a portion of their art spending is going to be directed towards buying very, very, very nice displays.
Yep.
And, they're going to hang them in their living room or in their dining room, and they're going to rotate through really, really nice pieces based on. I mean, how cool is it that if you hang one in your dining room and you want to throw a party, you can change the art that's displayed to the theme of the party?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guarantee you that that will become a trend in the next, let's say, 5 outward 10 years.
Mm, yeah. I'd agree with you. Yeah, because that's what I was most excited about, and I think because this is a very, it's so easy to get lost in all of the nuances of crypto and crypto art and fungible tokens and non-fungible tokens and all of the technical stuff. But to your point, like people really underestimate how something so simple of being able to change the art based on the mood has like how big that effect is. And if you have multiple screens, you can, and say you've collected hundreds and hundreds or even thousands, some people are just insane collectors here of work, you can actually match everything up with multiple displays. And you don't need to have that many displays to display all of the art that you want to display. But I think really where I grew the biggest connection here was that it's not necessarily the fact that yes, wall space is an issue and the digital frames, are a part of it. But I think it's the fact that I get to have a relationship with every single artist that I bought from, and I get I have such a close personal relationship that I get to know them before I buy a piece, or I get to see how they interact and how they treat people before I buy a piece. And I get to have this, like, that's, I think, my favorite part is that, like, I get to collect relationships, because I think to circle back as well to your point earlier is that, I mean, there's something that happens when a transaction takes place. And I think there's a bond that's formed. And it's so much more than money. It's a signal of trust. It's a signal of, like, wow, I really believe in this person. And not only am I buying a piece of beautiful art, but I'm contributing, whether that's, financially, emotionally, both towards, this person's longevity as an artist, being able to do something they really enjoy. And there's just something really, like, really special about that. And I had no idea until, like, I signed my first transaction digitally, and that was such a wild feeling. I think that's really what hooked me. The Beeple sale got me in, but once
Mm-hmm.
I, like, signed that transaction on Ethereum, I was like, wow, this feels really good. I think I want to do this again.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. No, I
um,
mean, I agree. I mean, I at least every one of one that I own, I have a relationship with the artist. Whether
Yeah,
it's in DMs, whether I've met them in person,
sure.
whether we've done calls, it ranges. But for every one of one, I definitely have a relationship with the artist, and I have relationships with a whole lot of artists that I haven't bought from,
Yeah,
and a whole lot of artists that I own editions from, and it's I do fear that it's cliched. We're still early, but that's it's actually true. If you talk about TAM, the total addressable market,
yep,
it's billion plus people without
sure.
without a doubt. Versus the actual market today, let's be generous and say it's like 250,000 people. And then if you pull it down to Twitter, there's a couple 100,000 people on Twitter that are in this space, but then there's probably 100,000 maybe that are regularly active participants, not just kind of
Right.
flies on the wall just observing, but they're actually posting. Yeah. And then you pull it down even further and you start talking about one of one artists and their collectors, who are prolific, well-known collectors. And now we're down to being probably generous, 25,000 people.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to form connections and find people when your pool of people's 25,000 people. So as we grow and as more people enter the space and start collecting crypto art, I worry that some of that closeness will disappear just to the size of the market and the number of people that are trying to speak within the social circle at the same time. But if you're here now and you're building those relationships now, you're in a really, really good place to maintain those relationships, because I would be willing to bet, I mean, we've seen it. If you bought a piece from ACK last year, well, you now own a piece from a Christie's selling artist.
Yes.
And so if you're here now, you're in a really good place to not only collect amazing work, but to form relationships with artists who are going to be very well known in a more general sphere in the next couple of years.
Yeah. I mean, that's, like, so here's the thing. I obviously the FTX meltdown and all of these just crazy events that are happening set this space back, I feel like, a couple of years. And, I almost kind of like selfishly, I want this space to grow, but, like I really want this space to grow, but selfishly, I'm just like, you know what? If this gets set back another 2 years, like right now, I'm kind of okay with it because I get to vibe with these people a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I mean, I understand. Like, you do want the space to grow, not just because of art and because you want to see your artist friends successful, and because maybe you're buying some art because you want to sell it in a couple of years and you think that by growing the space it'll go up in value. Not just for that, but I think if you're here, you also probably have an understanding of how revolutionary the technology can be, and you see some of the things that not just crypto art, but the NFT technology and blockchain technology can do for the world. I think you see the potential there. And so, yeah, you want it to grow, but yeah, I totally get it. It's like, all right, when it grows, it's not like we can keep the douchebags out,
Right. Yeah.
So, this is what happens when things become popular. A little bit of that initial community tends to get lost. And then people start telling you that you're being elitist and blah, blah, blah. And I hate to see that, but I know that we're going to go through that at some point. But yeah, I mean, I understand. I want it to grow desperately for a lot of reasons. But I'm very much enjoying the vibe that we've got right now.
I really am too. And I mean, the space has already changed from even just like when I came in about a year and a half ago. And that was like honestly like super comfy. That was one of my favorite times. But yeah, the space has grown a lot since, but it's this weird nuanced thing of it's a double-edged sword of it's, growth is a consequence of success. And so um, I wanted to I wanted to piggyback off something you said there. I wanted to ask you a question, outside of I feel like you've probably given this some thought. Is outside of like crypto art and some of the digital identity, profile pictures that were like that we all flex. Like, what's kind of like what like what's your most exciting use case of NFTs, or what would you like to see this technology be applied to that could solve a lot of problems?
How long is this episode?
It can be as long as you want, man.
All right. So I wrote a thread about it. It's if you check out my pinned tweet, I've got I break down all my threads into categories, and the first category is called Web3. And within that category, there's a thread called something along the lines of how NFTs and crypto will save the world. And it's a very long thread. It's like, I don't know, 60, 70 tweets. And it really digs into a lot of things that I think NFTs and crypto can do. But realistically, when you think about the two related technologies, right? Crypto and then NFTs are a second technology, and they're both built on top of blockchain. When you think about all three of these, what's the magic of them? And the magic of them are a couple of things. First, there is provable digital ownership of digital assets. Second is transparency, like radical transparency.
Right.
And then third is the immutable nature of transactions. And there are a lot of other pieces to it, but those three things are like defining characteristics.
Sure.
So what you have to do to think about how NFTs and crypto and blockchain technology will change the world is think about where can you take any one of those or a combination of them and apply them to problems that exist today. So a really easy one with my background as a lawyer is real property records. So real property records in the United States are just an absolute mess. They're recorded in the county clerk's offices of each individual county, and you got to go to the county website to look them up. And half the time you can't look them up. You actually have to go to the county clerk's office and blah, 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 blah. It's just total pain in the ass. So what if it wasn't that way? What if there was something like a blockchain explorer that was worldwide for all real property, and you could pull up the owner of any piece of real property simply by knowing the address, which you can do today. If you know the address, you can go to the county clerk's office, you can find out who owns it, right? And you might be saying privacy, privacy, privacy. Well, the way that you deal with that is that you just put the property into an LLC or something. How easy would it, like how much better is the real estate market, the real estate transactions, the lending process, if all real property ownership is stored on chain? So there's one use case that I don't know the timing, but and it's hard for me to even guess because there are so many entrenched interests. But I am 100% certain that at some point, real property records are going to move out of these archaic, literal file cabinets with file numbers into, I certainly hope it's not a private database. I really hope, but they're going to be digitized and it's going to be universal. I certainly hope that it is a blockchain, and they're going to be stored as an NFT. So what else does that do? Theoretically, if I wanted to, if I knew your address, I could steal the title to your property simply by creating a fake deed, a fake notary stamp, and going and filing it. And then I've just created a bunch of legal headaches for you that you're going to have to deal with.
Wow.
What if...
Does that, let me real quick, does that happen a lot?
I don't know how often it happens, but I do know that it does happen. I've seen it happen before. I've had to deal with the issue before. And it's a lawsuit. You got to go file a lawsuit to quash title. It's a total pain in the ass. Well, what if it wasn't possible to do that because the deed is an NFT token that, if you want to store it on your ledger, you absolutely can. That's cool. But, maybe instead of storing it on your ledger, you use a custodian. I'm sure that Bank of America and Chase Bank and all the giant banks are going to come up with custodial solutions at some point. In order for them to transfer it, you're going to have to sign a transaction, and then they're going to have to sign a transaction. So it'll be a multi-sig custodial process. But now that crime is gone. It just doesn't exist because no one can forge the NFT that represents title to your home. So there's one area. Let's talk about another area that I'm pretty confident about. Car titles. So car titles are literally pieces of paper.
Yeah.
And they don't tell you anything. Like if you sell a car today in the state of Texas, you're going to sign a physical car title and you're going to give it to the person. And on the back of it, when you sign it, I think it asks you for the current odometer reading. That's basically it. It's got the color of the car, make, model, VIN number, current odometer reading when you sell it. What if your car title was an NFT, but the metadata got updated every time you got service? And it got updated every time you got into a wreck and had to have body work done to the car. How powerful is that for buyers to be able to see actual pictures of the actual car on the title with current information on service records, with current information on whether the car's been in a wreck or not? And you might say, whoa, X, you can always go to carfax.com or whatever. Yeah, you can, but you have to pay for it. Why shouldn't all of that information that's already being gathered just be appended to the metadata on your NFT car title? And it's the same question about storage of that title is the same thing. Do you store it on your own ledger? Yeah, sure you could. Or you could put it within a custodial service from one of the giant banks. Or I'm sure that if you're looking for an idea for a new startup, listeners, create a really, really good digitally native custodial service for NFTs. There is a huge need in the coming years for that. And I think that part of the reason that people find allure in the crypto space and blockchain space and NFT space is because of a distrust of banks. So you probably have a good opportunity to compete, to create a competitive product with something that they're going to create, but you have the leg up on not being them. So
simply by that. Yeah,
exactly.
No, I like that. I know. And like I said, I'm glad you showed me that thread. You've clearly given this a lot of thought, and I want to play another side of this coin. So one of the biggest challenges like that, like when I preach the gospel of NFTs and blockchain to people, is a lot of like there's a mindset shift when it comes to owning, like, not your keys, not your crypto. It's a great meme. It's like super powerful, and there's this really strong sense of ownership. But, especially as someone with two ledgers and, my seed phrase backed up like on a steel titanium plate. But like that is a very kind of like nerve-wracking process. It's very empowering, but also like, did I fuck that up? Do I really have my keys after I burn the paper? There's definitely a learning curve when it comes to full ownership. And one of the challenges is that like getting people to take responsibility of that is going to be a big challenge. But also with last year, how many like, and I'm gonna use the event as an example because it was the meme of 2021. But how many Bored Apes got socially engineered to giving up their seed phrase? And it was like it was a lot. So I think that's like I agree with you on every point, and like the challenge that I just can't see past, or like and maybe I'm just not seeing it the correct way, or maybe I'm not thinking about it the correct way, or maybe I'm just like thinking way too far out of something that hasn't been built yet. But it's like, how do we beef up like security services for people that own their own keys and these non-custodial, or people that want to be non-custodial with it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, so at one point I owned a mutant ape. I bought a mutant ape at the end of December of 21 and sold it actually like just before NFT NYC, just a couple weeks before. But I spent a lot of time. I spent almost no time on Discord, but I did spend some time in the private channel of the BAYC Discord. And I cannot tell you how many people I helped with security issues. Like I can't even keep track. Yeah. It was these people owned assets worth, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and
right.
We're like, how do I get my seed phrase out of MetaMask? And I'm just like, oh God, please. First, let's solve these problems. But what this is because of how NFTs were in the news. It attracted a user base that likes to experiment, and some of that user base is not the most technologically savvy group of people, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, because most of the world isn't like you and me. I have 2 ledgers that I use now. I've got my seed phrases in multiple places. None of them have ever hit a digital device in any form or fashion. I'm actually about to do what you do and put them onto metal plates, but right now they're handwritten on laminated material, stored in in my physical bank vault, right? Most people aren't willing to do that. And so I do believe that there is going to be a huge need for the custodial services. They're trustworthy. But you raise a great question. Your question wasn't how do we deal with, and when I think about these things, my mom is going to be 75 in March. I think about these things from how would my mom use it? And so the answer for her is never going to be, hey mom, let's take the title to your car and put it onto this device. And what you have to do is you have to plug it into your computer and, oh no, wait, that's the wrong kind of USB cable. You need this one. No, I know that's a USB cable, but that's not just give it to me. That's not the answer, right? The answer for those people is going to be really trustworthy custodians. But for people like you and me, we're fine. We're fine. There's a big group that is closer to us than to my mom that want to self-custody, especially after seeing FTX and that sort of thing.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But they don't have the discipline or the time or the knowledge or whatever to get where we're at. And that's fine.
Right.
So I think that, I unfortunately, I can't remember the name of them, but I think that there are some products that are coming soon and that are in development now that allow for, multiple signers basically as backups to your self-custodied wallets. There's going to be a solution there. There will be a solution of you have your own ledger and you are custodying your keys through your ledger, but somebody else will actually hold your seed phrase, your private key for you to be released to you if you lose your ledger or break it. And like, honestly, that might be a great place for law firms. Law firms do things like that all the time. They will hold trust documents and release them at certain times and that sort of thing.
Sure.
So there are going to be solutions for every user class, from the my mom user class to you and me and everybody in between based on their level of sophistication and comfort with self-custody. But,
Yeah.
Self-custody is without a doubt something that almost everybody should do. If you've got any significant amount of crypto, you really need to learn how to use a hardware wallet. If you have like significant crypto, you need to learn how to use a multi-sig, like a Gnosis safe, something like that. Because remember, SBF is, obviously a pariah, and he's always been a fraudster, et cetera. And, he stole a bunch of money, right? We know that today. But 2 months ago, no shame on them. People were saying, hey, look, this is one of the best places. If you're not going to self-custody, this is one of the best places to put your money.
Wow.
And we know how that turned out. And so, like if you're bound and determined to keep your crypto on an exchange, the only thing that I can say to you is, there's two things I would say to you. One, okay, but at least learn how to use hardware wallet, at least learn how to self-custody. And then the other thing I would say to you is, use a US-based exchange that is actually regulated.
Right.
Use Coinbase, or I think Gemini is US-based. I think Kraken's US-based. Use one of those, and if they're publicly traded, even better, because then they've got all sorts of reporting requirements. Because as we've seen, FTX used I think it was, quote, the first metaverse accounting firm to do its audits.
I saw that.
And those audits turned out to be trash. So, whereas if you're Coinbase and you're a public company, if you go hire, scrub audit firm out of the Bahamas to do your audits, I'm actually on the FCC side on this one, which is rare for anybody that knows me. The SEC is going to be like, no, that is not sufficient for your 10K and your 10Q. They're going to expect you to hire a big five.
That's right. So you actually, it's been wild to watch all of this unfold. And I think for me, one of the biggest challenges is that people tend to lump crypto and NFTs and art and all of this stuff all into one thing. And they see this thing with SBF happen. And then oh, well, yeah, I told you crypto is a scam. And it's no, this just furthers the case for but it's you can't separate that to the average person who hasn't done the research,
Right. So let's talk about that for a second.
Yes.
So Celsius, Terra and Luna, FTX, all of these things have failed. And if you followed me for a long time, you know that I tend to post really positive things. I try and have a very positive outlook.
Yep.
And over the last couple of weeks, my tweets have been not quite as positive. And the reason that they haven't been as positive is because I didn't get hurt in any of these. I didn't lose a single penny in any of these things.
Right.
But every one of these failings is being spun as a failure of crypto and a failure of DeFi. And that's flat fucking wrong. Every single meltdown has been the failure and outright fraud of a centralized authority, not of decentralization.
Yep.
And yet it is being spun by the media and by regulators and lawmakers as we have to protect people from DeFi and from crypto. No, you need to protect people from fucking frauds, and it's very frustrating for me. Yeah,
I would agree, man. And I think that, I'm in the camp of, if we actually had better if we had not better language, but if we just had language in general about what crypto is classified as and what NFTs are classified are, and making the process more desirable to open up an exchange in the US with fair regulation and fair protection, I feel like a lot of this would be mitigated. Out of all the exchanges, I'd have to say, number one, Coinbase is the only exchange I've ever bought from. There's and especially after watching I'm not sure if you watched the documentary on Amazon. If not, you should. Like it's like I think it's like $10 to buy or $3.50 to rent. But it was super interesting watching how much like Brian number one, how Brian and Fred actually started Coinbase, but what they continue to do to try to play by the laws or play by the rules that are already in place, and what they're trying to do for the industry as a whole and what they're lobbying for. It's super like, it instills a lot of confidence. To me, it's like the people who could make the decision to make it more appealing for exchanges to be in the US are doing what you just said, which is I totally agree with, is that they're spinning it. Well, this is why it's bad. It's like, well, what if, maybe like he's a fraud, like SBF now is a fraudster in general, but if we didn't have such strict laws to push them away, if we had, we didn't really have anything to provide clarity for these exchanges, there's obviously a reason he went to go start in the Bahamas, but what if we had a better landscape to do that here? And I just think that this is just the complete wrong attitude by some of these lawmakers you're just looking at it the complete wrong way, especially with Elizabeth Warren, with like her and Gensler, they never miss an opportunity. They never miss an opportunity to slam this industry.
Oh man, you're hitting like all of the piss ex-lawyer off buttons right now.
Sorry, man.
No. So, in my pinned tweet, Web3 section, there is a thread called something along the lines of why the United States sucks at crypto regulation, part 1. I have not yet written part 2. Part 1, though, is specifically about the SEC and Gary Gensler. And it basically makes the argument that he sucks at crypto regulation because he wants to kill crypto. You have to remember that Gary was he's a Goldman Sachs alum, worth $140 million, his personal wealth. And he has a lot of friends in traditional finance and the banks. And just read the thread, because I don't want to read the thread and think about what the arguments that I've set forth there. Part 2, which I have not written, will eventually be about Elizabeth Warren. And basically the problem there is that she thinks she has to protect people from themselves all the time. And she thinks that people are too stupid to make their own decisions. And I just reject that view of the world. I think that, sometimes people are going to make decisions and they're going to get hurt by them. But a lot of times they're going to learn something from getting hurt by them. And a lot of times people are going to make really good decisions that they wouldn't otherwise be able to make if you told them, you're too dumb to do this. We have to protect you from yourself. And so that's kind of what I think on it. And ultimately, I think that for a whole lot of reasons, one of which is that at least today, over the past probably decade and a half, the United States government has become more and more divided and is fundamentally broken in being able to pass most laws that we really need. We've seen just a complete and utter failure by our lawmakers to pass reasonable, clear laws regarding crypto that will protect consumers through proper disclosure. And proper disclosure does not mean registering as securities and following all the securities regulations. Through ensuring that exchanges are required to have one-to-one reserves for everything that is deposited by consumers, and that exchanges are not allowed to loan out those reserves without explicit permission, and are never allowed to loan those reserves to their affiliates. I think that there are a lot of things that we could pass that would be very beneficial. Laws regarding de minimis exceptions for exchanging tokens for purposes of taxation. There's a complete and utter lack of clarity. I mean, there's not a lack of clarity. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The IRS's position is anytime you exchange one token for another, it's a taxable event. Anytime you exchange ETH for a piece of art, it's taxable event, etc. And if you're going to use ETH as a unit of account, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
It does not.
And so, we could pass reasonable laws. The United States has passed, and I'll give you one that I know intimately. The United States Bankruptcy Code, before the 2005 amendments, is one of the most brilliant pieces of legislation ever crafted. It was written by three guys who deeply understood the goals and purposes of bankruptcy, and it is brilliant. We could do the exact same thing with crypto. We could get 10 people in a room, tell them what our goals are, and let them craft beautiful legislation. But today, we live in a political system that is highly divided, and that is, I'm going to use the word infected. And I mean it like a disease that is infected by special interest money. And so I don't have high hopes that we're going to end up where we could. And it's unfortunate. What we risk is seeing the United States fall behind on an innovation path with the rest of the world due to our lawmakers' failure to pass reasonable legislation.
That was my next question that you already answered. Because that to me is what that spells out, is that, if we don't do something, if we don't pass off legislation and regulation, then that's what's going to happen. And that would be a really sad day, because I've granted, I've not done as much research as I probably I just don't, quite frankly, don't have the time. But from what I've seen, and maybe I should make more time, but is like, I've seen our government's efforts, like, oh yeah, we're going to do a CBDC. I'm like, oh, that's what we're focusing on, versus writing thoughtful legislation for some of the technology that we currently have. We're just trying to copy China.
Let me jump in on the CBDC issue.
Yeah.
So, of course, I wrote a thread about that. The title of that thread is something along the lines of, CBDCs are the most effective means of controlling activity other than violence. Something like that. I can't remember exactly. So
that's a powerful title.
Well, it's a scary subject matter. If you think about what a CBDC is, central bank digital currency, it is a blockchain-based digital currency intended to be used as a legal tender and a unit of account. So it's a digital dollar, right? Except it has all of the arguable benefits of something like Ethereum. Programmability, transparency, the ability to use, when I say programmability, I mean things like smart contracts. It has all of those things. When you talk about something that's decentralized, like Ethereum, those are unquestionably benefits. Transparency lets you just check the chain. That's just check the chain, and there's your truth, right?
Yep.
You can have self-settling sales. For example, you could go and buy a piece by Sam Spratt for $250,000, the equivalent in Ethereum, and you don't have to have an escrow agent or a middleman or anything like that. You can self-settle that sale automatically, right? Those are incredibly powerful benefits. When you centralize those things within the confines of government, then those benefits, in my view, become incredible risk to users. Especially the last couple of days, people have been talking about AI and its ability to generate text, right?
Yep. That's been wild to watch. Yep.
So the way that works is that, voluminous pages of text. We're talking millions and millions and millions of pages of text are fed into a computer that then analyzes them and creates relationships between words and that sort of thing. And then it's able to output this text that based on everything that it's read, right? So part one is looking at a lot of data and then synthesizing it. Okay. So if you take that concept and you say, I don't care about the text output, I just care about what the data says. All right. Well, if a centralized authority like a government knows every single penny that you spend, and they can set an AI out to see, has this person been spending money in a way that we don't like? And they can have an AI discover that for them. And then you add programmability on top of it and say, all right, well, if let's use something environmental. We being the government, we don't want people to be able to spend more than $100 a month on meat because growing the animals, raising the animals to create meat creates greenhouse gases and it's environmentally unfriendly. Then that centralized authority could simply create rules within the chain that says that if you spend more than $100 a month on meat, you can't. The transaction won't go through after that, right? So that's wow. And that's a pretty easy example. That example is not actually that dangerous. Where it gets really, really dangerous, and I make this point in the thread. We both live in Texas, right?
Yep.
So over the summer, the United States Supreme Court determined that states can make abortion illegal. It is not a protected right. It is not a protected right.
Yep.
What if Texas had a line to the issuing authority to say, hey, people that live within that are residents of our state, we don't want them to be able to spend money on abortion services anywhere.
Wow.
So now you live in Texas, that's where your residency is, but maybe you go to California and let's use something that's, that most people I don't think would find offensive, because you have found out that your child is going to have a devastating genetic defect that will significantly alter both their quality and quantity of life to the point where it would be difficult to call it a life, right?
Yeah.
So you go to California because you want to terminate that pregnancy. If CBDCs were the only unit of account and Texas had a line to the issuing authority, Texas could make it so that you couldn't go anywhere in the world and terminate that pregnancy, even though you knew it was the right thing for you to do.
Yeah, it was,
So CBDCs, when you think about where technology is heading from an AI perspective, from a programmability perspective, et cetera, I consider it to be one of the most effective ways of a government to implement its policies against your will other than violence.
Man.
These are supposed to be fun, right? Your whole audience is going to be listening to this and be like, shit, man, I thought I was in for a fun ride with a collector who's going to talk about art. And now he's telling me that the government's trying to ruin my life.
But you know what? I feel like these conversations need to be had, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like wow. Because I've thought about it. I think about it more in the sense of, of like how China's currently doing it. And I'm like, man, like that, what they're currently doing and how their governments run, that to me is like where that's like to me the behavior, like decision, that's like where CBDCs like can lead us to, where it's like absolute and utter control. And that is just a scary thought. And speaking of threads, the thread I actually reference, and I shared with a friend was 6529's like the freedom to transact, the right to transact and like what that actually means. that one completely shifted my perspective, especially with that was happening with all the
truckers in Canada.
Truckers in Canada. Yeah, exactly. And that was one of the first real eye-opening moments where I was like, holy shit. Like that's what we're building against. That is where it was like a real world example that I could finally put two and two together because, again, I'm still like learning and growing about the world as, I just might like, I'm still in my first apartment, or second apartment. And so learning all of this without having previous knowledge of how things were done in the past is very interesting to be learning about this while everything is just in absolute and utter turmoil, and so all of these concepts and principles that, crypto is built on, I'm like, okay, cool. This sounds good. This feels good, but where's the example? Like where's like that tangible like moment, or where's that moment in time where this, where this would have been a better solution to have? And that was the first one where I was like, oh, that's clear. It's cut and dry. Like that was absolutely horrendous. What happened. So I think this deserves to be like, this deserves to have a stage. And I think it's something of real substance, that needs to be talked about because especially in a market like this is where I learned how to build my conviction. Like I learned how to build my conviction in a down market. Even though Beeple had made that sale, like it was still kind of a down market and still until like June or July. Mm-hmm. And that's really where a lot of the noisemakers had kind of, left the space and it was kind of quiet and people were just like in this, like had this vibe of just like sharing ideas and talking about real world things and having healthy debates. And, that was really attractive. So I think that, while this is historically an art podcast, or like a podcast that has a lot of artists on and all the questions are typically geared towards art, I think it's a really good, thing that people should at least noodle on and maybe go read, one of your threads on, myself included. So I don't know, man, I appreciate it. And I'm glad we kind of went in that direction because I hadn't really talked about this since it's happened. Mm-hmm. And so it's been I think I was just kind of waiting for the right person who, had some thoughts, had some opinions, had some very weighted, opinions based on experience, to have this conversation with. So no, I genuinely appreciate it, man.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, 6529, if you don't follow him, you should. He is, his threads are without a doubt the most important threads that are written on a lot of these topics. And, the art is beautiful. I collect it. But the technology that powers them is extremely important. Mm-hmm. And I really think that we're at a crossroads right now. And we'll be at this crossroads for a couple of years. And in one direction, the technology is a powerful and freeing, equalizing force that helps those who have not been able to transact in a traditional finance model, that have been ignored by the giant entrenched companies worldwide to find financial, economic, and social freedom. That's one path. That's the path I desperately hope that we go down.
Yeah.
The other direction, though, is very scary. It is a direction where we still end up using blockchain. That's inevitable, I think.
Right. Yeah.
But the transparency of blockchain combined with the power of AI and the continually divisive nature of our political systems created dystopia for many, where they have less freedom, less money, and less power. And we're right there, man. We're right at a place where we have to pick collectively which way we want to go. And if we are not careful and we just sit back and we let people that are in power do what they want to do, there's a real risk that we're going to go the wrong direction. And I don't even blame them for those decisions.
Right.
They think that they've always had the power. They've always had the power to control the monetary system, to control economies, et cetera. And you know what? Throughout the course of human history, they've done a pretty good job of it. You know, if you look at our world today, leave all of the dystopia stuff I'm talking about. Just you can, if you live in the United States of America, wherever you are, doesn't matter if you're in a tiny little town, you can buy damn near anything inside of a week, right?
Yeah.
There truly is. It truly is an amazing world. And so they think, hey, you know what? We've done a good job so far. Let's keep doing it. And the only way to keep doing it is to maintain our power. But I think that discounts how divisive the world has become. And the risk, the very real risk that somebody that you vehemently disagree with and that does not have your best interest at heart will get their hands on the code and be able to use it to effectuate incredible control, the likes of which has never been seen. So we have to collectively make a decision. And I hope that we make to make a better world, a more free world, a more equal world, and not one that is under incredible scrutiny and control from governments.
So
you want to talk about art now?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I feel like that's like a great way to I feel like, because I was gonna ask, like, how can we do that, and I still may ask that question towards the end, like when we wrap it up. But you know, like that to me, so I'll tell you this. There was a friend, this will be a great transition, because there was a friend when I'm trying to explain to him what this technology is and like what I'm doing with it, and you know how I'm like, yeah, just literally what I'm doing with it. And he was like, yeah, but Kyle, like there's so much going on in the world, and like there's all, like, how do you just like remain so positive about what you're doing, and how do you stay so happy, and like how do you just truly believe in this? And I said, well, you know, number one is I stopped watching the news probably 10 years ago, like local news, because there was, number one, it was nothing but bad things and violence, and just like, I'm like, this is awful, I don't want to watch this. But number two is that I chose to affect an area that, you know, like I chose an industry where I could have a positive outcome in, you know, and to me, that is giving people a stage to like share their story, because this world is driven by stories. You know, this world's driven by stories. It's driven by creativity. It's driven by art. You know, we can lump that all into one because art tells stories. And I said, this is where I choose to have the biggest impact. And this is where I choose to put all my efforts, because, you know, what I'm doing here may not directly change what's happening, but it could like be the catalyst to help someone go change, you know, or to help someone who has more experience to go change, to make that positive change, you know. But I just choose to like play around and talk and vibe with people that like really love technology and really love art, you know. And I feel like outside of my IRL community that I built here in, you know, in Austin, like these are the nerds that like I always was searching for, you know. This is my tribe, man. And I wouldn't have it any other way. But let's talk about some of the reasons. Like, I don't know, I have my own reasons why I collect, and I'm going to share those, but I'll segue that into yours in a second. But for me, I'll tell you, I almost, like, the way I look at this is that like I almost try to tell my own story through the art that I buy. Like, that's like, I try to buy art that shares like a current thing that I'm going through. Usually it's super emotional. So I bought some of Lord Neutron's pieces and Urfron's pieces, and things that are really expressive, you know, where it's like, damn, like it almost helps me heal in a way through whatever I'm going through. So like, I kind of like to tell a story. I like to tell my own story through buying art from a bunch of different artists and curating that all in one spot. So I'm sure there's a lot to go off of there, but what is one of the, like, how do you go about collecting? Like, what is it that you enjoy about it?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, the most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, the primary question that I ask myself when I'm buying a piece is, would I be proud to show this in my home? Do I want to display this so that when my friends come over, they see it on my wall and they're like, dude, that's an awesome piece. What is this? Tell me more about it. I collect art that I love, that I want to display, that I want to own, that I want to show off. So that's like the base question almost all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then if I'm really starting to if I'm going to buy an expensive piece, because you can easily do that with editions. You're just like, hey, I like this, I vibe with this. It's $100. I'm going to do it, right?
Yep.
But if I'm going to buy a piece that's 2, 3, 4 ETH, whatever, then I think about it a little bit more. And one of the questions that I ask myself is, do I believe that this artist has created a unique voice? And so if you look at some of my one-of-ones, you get like King Xerox.
Yeah, I was looking at his piece there. Yeah. Yep.
There are a lot of glitch artists, excellent glitch artists, but nobody tells a story with a single image quite the way that he does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's one of the questions that I ask myself. And then I ask myself a question about quality. When you've looked at enough art, hopefully some of it physical art, enough times, then you start to get a sense of quality. And what I mean by this, everybody listening has watched a lot of TV and movies, right?
Yeah.
You can put it on a show or a movie and you can sit back and you can be like, wow, this is really well made. Or you might go, something's off,
Mm-hmm.
The quality is just obviously not there. The acting's not great or whatever. So I asked myself questions about quality. Those two questions factored with the, do I vibe with this? Do I want to show this to people? If it doesn't get past that question, by the way, the other two questions don't matter. If I don't love it,
that.
Even if I think that it is a great quote unquote investment, I'm not buying it. So to the artist whose work I own, congratulations. I actually do love your work. But if I'm trying to buy a piece that I think, and I have zero intent to sell any of my pieces in any reasonable short-term period of time, I buy for a decade or longer hold.
Gotcha.
But if I'm buying a piece that's a couple of ETH and I think, hey, you know what, someday I might sell this and it would be nice to sell this for a profit. Those are the other two questions that I ask myself when I'm evaluating whether I want to pull the trigger or not.
Got it. I like that. Yeah. And see, I'm still in editions mindset where it's like, I don't have as much money for one-of-ones yet, so I'm still in that different, there's a different mindset for editions versus one-of-ones. And I really like how you broke that down. On the one-of-one side though, at what point let me ask this, have you bought a significant or a one-of-one that's been say 2 ETH without interacting with the artist? Or do you make that a point to do that and get to know them and build that relationship?
I don't think I've ever spent more than a quarter ETH without interacting with the artist. Got it. I'm thinking about it. And for a lot of reasons. One, I want to get to know them. Two, sometimes I ask questions about the process. Not because I saw somebody recently who got very offended that somebody asked a question about the process. And it's not because I'm trying to see, did you spend enough time? Is this hard enough? It's because I'm the kid that really loved to watch how they make that or whatever the show is called on Saturday morning. I like to see how, and I'm just like, dude, that's so cool. So I like to ask those questions. And then, frankly, I hate auctions. Absolutely hate them.
They're stressful, man.
Well,
I don't know. At least the ones I've participated in.
they're stressful, and I lost some auctions to people that have immediately listed for a flip, and that's their right. That's fine. That's totally their right. But I don't like losing that way, and I tend to do, if I'm going to buy a significant piece, I tend to try and do it as a private sale. I don't want to have to deal with it. I don't want, and frankly, I'm cognizant of the fact that I've got a lot of followers, and if I start an auction and then the artist posts about it, which is totally cool, definitely, I want to see artists succeed, but I'm cognizant of the fact that that might trigger somebody to bid who was not interested before. And I'm not buying because somebody else bought it. I'm buying because I like it. And so if I can avoid the stress and just kind of all of that bullshit, then I will. And so I think every piece that I have that was an ETH or more was done on a private sale.
I like that. I like that approach. I mean, I've heard D's do that too, where he'll create, he'll spin up a wallet or anonymous wallet, to do things like that too, because he's talked about that as well, is that, with there's that theory of memetics, and if this person's signaling, interest, then it's just going to bring out that competitive nature in humans. And that's why, to me, I think this industry is really intriguing, because it's so multifaceted and there's so many different there's a couple of personality types that are honestly required to make this, space move forward. But artists typically have different mindsets than collectors do, and then there's the flipper, then there's the people who collect long-term, and then the people that flip short-term, and everyone has this weird role to play, but all of the motives and all of the behaviors are quite different. And that is what has always fascinated me. I can't remember who tweeted this. I think it was Jubbis J or something. I can't remember who it was. But he was artists are have this super oh, I just want people to buy the art because they want to connect with the art. But also artists, when they get an auction, smash that fucking auction button, share, retweet, get your bids in.
That was, yeah, I think that was him. And it was a day or two ago. I saw that and I chuckled a little bit, which, let's talk about something that is rarely acknowledged.
Okay.
If somebody is an artist in this space, they're in business. They have a business to sell art. And there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that. And so, I often see people I don't want to shill. Dude, you're not shilling, you're advertising. There's nothing wrong with advertising. Now, don't do it in an annoying way. Don't slide into my DMs if we've never interacted before to be hey, thought you might want to see this piece. And it's some piece that you minted 6 months ago that's never sold, that is completely different from anything that I've ever collected before. Don't do that. Don't do that to anybody.
Right.
That's annoying. Don't look at one of my threads or somebody else's thread or post about CBDCs, for example, and then go, hey, by the way, have you seen this piece? No, that's the wrong place. Okay, that's the equivalent of those YouTube inner video unskippable ads that you're they were just about to give me the last step on cooking the fucking chicken, right? And then you get forced with this minute-long video ad that you can't skip. That is what that is. But if you post, on your own timeline, regularly, I don't have a problem with an artist posting every single day about a piece that they have available. Post other good content too, though. you
You
know?
know who does a really good job of this? Is Christopher Shen.
Mhm.
He's one of my favorites on that. And he nails that. I think he's one of the best examples of that in the space. Because it's you hit this like great point. I think we've gotten so jaded on, it's just like the word shilling has a negative connotation to it. Um, but I think more as this market matures, I think people are starting to finally realize, if they didn't realize this was a business before, then they're starting to realize that they have to, essentially operate like a business, or at least try to figure out how to do that. And part of that is like, especially even in the beginning with this podcast, like I barely advertised it at all. And it was like a lot of eyes never got on it because of that, and it's not only do I have to create the content, but I have to share it. I have to be bullish on it. Because if I'm not bullish on it, if an artist is not bullish on their art, why should anyone else be bullish on the price tag that they're paying? Why should anyone else pay money for that if they don't love it? But it's this weird human emotion of like asking for things, or like coming off as too arrogant, or coming off, when you have good intent. And my thing also is that, like, to add to this conversation, is that I think we need to be more cognizant and more comfortable of like, not many people have run businesses before, and this shit's really hard. So like allowing people to make mistakes, to learn in public, to because that's the only way we grow. And if you don't know the right way to do it, then go fuck up and you'll figure out the right way to do it. Like obviously don't intentionally be an asshole, but if you had a way of doing things and someone can give you some honest feedback or say, hey, this doesn't work, and you have the ability to change that, I don't know, that to me needs to be more, I don't know, accepted or welcomed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Look, you learn by making mistakes.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I am a senior executive, and I've made mistakes worth tens of thousands of dollars. Okay.
Yeah.
Was it good to burn the money? No, but I learned very important lessons making those mistakes,
Right.
that have made me better at what I do. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. But I'm a Nifty Gateway publisher, right? I do one drop a month. I try and work with artists I only work with artists whose work I want to own.
I like that. Yeah.
The reason that I do one drop a month is because I don't want to oversaturate it. I frankly don't have the time to do more than one. And I have a plan when I go in on my way into a drop to effectively advertise that drop. So I will post about that drop starting about a week out, and I will feed one image a day, just one piece, for the first couple of days until all of them have been revealed. And then after all of them have been revealed, I will continue posting once a day until we get to drop day. And I'll probably post twice on drop day, once in the morning and then once closer to the drop. Because I know that people use Twitter at different times. I know that posts at different times are more effective and less effective. I know that I don't actually know the numbers for this space, but in mature areas, there are well-known numbers for how many times you have to be in front of a customer before they're going to buy.
Yeah.
And the number is never one, unless maybe it's a toy for a 5-year-old, in which case the 5-year-old is going to be like, I want that the first time they see it, right? But the number is never be in front of a customer one time and you're going to get the sale. That is never the answer. And so I know that I've got about a week, a month, where I'm going to have one post a day that is an advertising post. I know that I'm going to have roughly 7 opportunities, 8 if you include the second post that I do on drop day, to get in front of people so that they can see it. And that has worked quite well for me. Now, is that how everybody should do it? No, it's going to be different for everybody. But because I have a timed drop at a time that I designate, that will run for a limited period of time, that I think a lot of people are interested in, because there are going to be pieces that are at auction that can go for, a couple of ETH. And then there's also, every single time I've done it, there's been an affordable piece, an open edition.
Yep.
I need to get in front of as many potential collectors as possible, and posting frequently on at a good time of day on a regular cadence allows me to do that. That is part of the business of art. It's why, people bash the traditional gallery system. And yes, there are undoubtedly galleries that were predatory and that provided very little to the artists that they repped. But there were also some galleries that did a really good job of helping those artists find collectors that they would have not otherwise found.
Yeah.
And so if you're an independent artist and you're not working with somebody to help you with that stuff, you've got to do it yourself. And that means figuring out the best way for you to market your own work.
Yeah. And there's a lot of ways to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, I never do Twitter spaces about my drops. It's not something that either I have time for or that I really want to do. I'll hop on spaces sometimes, but to be honest, most of the time that I jump on a spaces, I've had a couple of drinks and I just want to vibe.
That's right. Yeah.
I don't want to answer a bunch of questions. Or I don't mind answering the questions, but they're going to be, maybe not the best answers I've ever given. Right. And I certainly don't want to do something that's like super bland. But if you're an artist that you are not comfortable writing and you're not comfortable posting, dude, go do tour spaces. Talk about your work on a space. There are a lot of people that host spaces. These is a great example. If you want, or Fungible, or there's a bunch of them. If you want to get on stage and you want to tell people about a new piece that you're really excited about, I'm 100% sure that they've got a space coming up sometime soon that they would be more than happy to hear about it and to pin your piece to the space. So figure out what you're comfortable doing, what you can commit to, and then do that. And it's something that you have to do to be able to sell your work.
Yeah, because that's what it is. It's just selling. And because I've seen a lot of artist frustrations around wanting to just create and not wanting to market, and not wanting to sell and not wanting to do any of this. And it's like, because it's just hard.
Well, you know what? If that's what you want to do, that's fine.
Yeah.
But you've got to go find somebody that will do the other part for you.
That's right.
It doesn't matter how good your work is. If no one sees it and in the right context,
that's
to
right.
know that it's available, to know where it's available, to know how much it is. If no one sees that, then it will never sell.
And there's probably throughout the years been thousands of just monumental works that did not get that did not get the spotlight they deserved, probably because of that exact reason.
100%. 100%. There have been, fantastic works throughout history that, the creators did not get in front of the right people at the right time. And if they had done so, art history would look different than it does today.
It's a fascinating topic to wonder what if, like in a different timeline, in a different universe, in a different reality, a different simulation, let's call it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What would that look like? Well, man, I think I'm starting to get hungry, man. So I'm going to start. Let's start wrapping this up.
Sounds good.
This has been a blast, man. We've gotten to literally talk about everything from Texas to paths that this country and world could go down, to collecting and vibing with art, and just about everything in between, man. But this is why I don't plan questions before my podcast, because there's no way this would have happened otherwise. So this has been a treat, man. I know Twitter's your main, like, where you share all of your information. Y'all, if you're not following XLawyer, please go ahead and do that. And I did not just shame on me. I didn't know you had such an organized pinned tweet. So please check that out because there's a lot of great content there, and I like how you broke that down. And we may have to do a part 2 on the U.S. government one once you come out with your Elizabeth Warren piece.
Sounds good. You know what? I do want to add one thing to this.
Yeah.
Something that I tweeted today. I've attacked Gary Gensler. He was a Democratic appointee. I'm going to write a piece at some point. Honestly, I know it's going to really piss me off to write it, so that's why I've been putting it off. But I'm going to write part 2 that's going to use Elizabeth Warren as an example. I want to be really clear about something. I don't consider myself a member of either party, and I believe that both parties have massive failings. So please don't take my statements against 2 particular people that just happen to be Democrats, calling them out for some of their failings as an endorsement of the Republican Party. I think that there are problems with both parties. So
this needs bipartisan. I mean, this requires skin in the game on both sides, to be honest.
100%.
Yeah, there's no like way. There's no one party that's going to be pro. This is an everyone kind of thing. It's something we need to come together on. But lastly, dude, I just want to give you an opportunity. Is there any artists who you want to shout out? Is there any? I know you do Nifty drops. Is there anything between now and then that you'd want to maybe have people give a little alpha for people who've stayed for this long?
All right. Well, don't leak this because
No.
I'm not actually announcing it until the 5th.
Okay.
But if you're listening to this on the 12th, I highly suggest that you check out Nifty Gateway on the 14th for my drop with Mind's Eye. There is an open edition for $99. The alpha is that you want more than one because there is a burn mechanic for that as well. I think you're really going to like it.
Big fan of Michael. I got to meet him in New York. I love you. Big fan. Big fan. Love that dude. Thank you for.
He does incredible work. Yeah, he does incredible work, and I'm just I'll give you one more piece of alpha. I'm not going to reveal who, but I already have my artists booked for January, February, March, and April, and I think you're all going to be excited about them. And I can also guarantee you that there is going to be an affordable piece with every single one of them.
Thank you for what you, dude. Yeah. I love everything that you do, man. Thank you for being a champion of this space and really caring about it and putting a lot of thought behind how you carry yourself and the reputation and the legacy that you're building here. It's super inspiring, and these are you and D's and Fungi, and man, people like you are the type of people I've always gravitated towards and always kind of never found in communities before this. So it's again, super big pleasure to have you on, man. Thank you for spending so much time with me and going so in depth with all these topics. This has been fun.
My absolute pleasure, man. It's been a lot of fun, and I sincerely appreciate the compliments, but I am in fact just a humble human frog hybrid.
That's right, man. Well, hey, I think that's a great place to end it. But again, thank you so much, ex-lawyer.
Thank you.